Hey everyone, welcome back to another video. In this week's video, I'm going to show you 5 really quick tips that you can do to your plug-in synths to make them sound a little bit more analog and a little bit more full of life rather than just a little bit sterile and lifeless. So let's get into it. So step number 1 is to add some pitch modulation to the fine tune of the oscillators. When you have multiple oscillators, you can kind of get away with not having this, but with a single oscillator, it is really good because this will provide the movement that you would kind of expect to see from an analog synth, because obviously it's going to go a little bit out of tune and whatnot, so we're going to kind of introduce that into it. So as you can see here, we just have Serum with the sine wave. I've got a tuner so you can see what's going on, and then just a little keyboard. So if I play the F, you can see it is smack bang in the middle. Now if we just add this to the fine, and you can see it's going really crazy. So what we want to do is just pull this amount down to around just to taste. We got a little bit of movement now. And then we can come, and I generally turn the BPM off and have it just sort of free flowing a little bit. So we turn that off and then pull the rate down. And there we go. Obviously if you wanted the sound of it slightly going out of tune a little bit slower, you can just pull this rate down. And then as it goes, it will slowly move in and out of tune. You can see it's starting to move there, and there you go. So it's a really simple thing to do, but I find that it goes a long way, especially if you got multiple elements and stuff like that. Just these little fine details can really add to making your track less sterile, and also you can kind of trick the ear instead of just getting that ear fatigue of hearing the same loop over and over again. So point number 2 is to use tape plugins, and you'll see what I mean by that. And for this, we're going to we can go and let's initialize a preset, and let's go back to the sine wave. And then I'm going to bring up this tape emulation little plugin. And this is a free plugin, Tape Cassette 2. So you don't have to feel like I'm using some fancy one from UAE or UAD, sorry, or Waves or something like that. This is a free plugin, and it still gets the job done very well. So you can see if I turn it on, we have a couple of different features. We have saturation, low pass, and that. The main thing we're going to look at is the wow and the flutter. So if I turn these both down, you can see we got it straight down the middle again. And then if I start to introduce the wow, we got that little bit of movement like we did with the fine tune. And then the flutter can also give a little bit as well. So if you just add a little bit of each, we'll get that movement. Obviously we can go kind of crazy with it and get a lot of movement and stuff like that, but for me, I'm just using a little bit of each to kind of get a little bit of that effect in with the plugins that I'm using. Point number 3 is to use variations in velocity and then put the velocity to the volume. So for this, I have Serum again, and I just have this little MIDI region playing just single notes on and off. So you can see there is the tiniest a little amount of movement there, but that's only just because of the note being triggered on and off. We can come along, and what we can do is come into Serum. We're going to go to the matrix, and then what we want to do is we want the source to be velocity. And then the destination, we're just going to go with volume, maybe global. No, so we're just going to go with volume here. Now we're going to increase this. I'm going to increase it to the max just so you can hear the effect. And then if I come into here, we're going to move around these a little bit. Oop. We want to pull that down so then we get, it's at the lowest volume, and then all of the volume is done by the modulation. So, and you can hear that going sort of really crazy there. And what we can do is go along here, cut that, glue those together, and then what we can do is select them all, MIDI transform, and then random velocity. And then for this, I'm going to make it super wide so you can hear the effect in like full blown, and then so obviously that's a very exaggerated version of the effect, but what we can do now is come in here and then this is our window. We're going to go from 81 to 110 is the velocity numbers that we're going to keep it in between, but randomize between those two. Select and operate. And now you can hear the changes in that sound. Obviously, if you've got something a lot more musical and something like that, it's going to sound a lot better than just a sine wave on and off. But for the purpose of the demonstration, I think that it showcases what you can do and some of the little bits and pieces. One other bit you can do as well is, because this is just a 4-bar loop, is you can come along and then we're going to add this. So now it's going to be, because this would be 8 bars, so this is 7 bars long. Go like that. We're going to select them all. Function, MIDI transform, random velocity. Got that same window again. We'll go select and operate. Now it's kind of a little bit more random. And when you start to pull this out, it's never going in exact measurements. It's 7 bars, so it's always going to be the 7th bar, and it won't be perfect 8 bars that you'll hear the same velocity at the same point every time. One thing to keep in mind with this is you might have to come in and dial it in a little bit if some of the velocity is a little bit high, because when they come in at those random points, it can kind of take you out of the song a little bit. So just keep that in mind when you're choosing the highest velocity value and how much of the effect. So how much of the effect in here that you want. So we can pull this back. And you can see here is like a good little demonstration of how much we're getting there. Number 4 is the use of filters and kind of randomizing those filters. So for this demonstration, I've got the Arturia MS-20 filter, and you can see on the filter we have the envelope amount, the sequence amount, and the function amount. So the envelope amount, I'm not really doing too much with it. Actually, there's nothing going on with it. The sequencer, it's actually going to be modulating it a little bit, and then the function generator is going to modulate it on top of that. So you're going to get 2 lots of modulation, and it's going to allow for a little bit more movement on the sound. So if I just play a little bit, it's off. Let's come back into Serum real quick, and let's crank the volume. So we've bypassed all of that past modulation, and just to make sure, let's just get rid of it. So now we know that we're only getting it from this filter. So if I turn it on, you can see we got no movement, and then as I turn it on, the peaks down, it's just, you can see we got the high pass, just giving that little bit of movement. We got the sequencer doing a random amount on it's at 15 steps, and then the function generator is just going up. There's no, I think there's no, oh, it is synced. So we can unsync that. And now we have lots of movement. It's giving us a little bit of movement on the actual, the tuner rather. And if we increase these, so you can hear when it's like going kind of crazy, but we just want a little bit of each of those. We can also come along, just move this up. So and that's just giving us a little more. Obviously we could start to mess around with these actual values here. And add in some of the resonance from the filter, but I found that just using just a little bit was really good. And then obviously if we wanted to add a little bit more in there, we can start to add some of these in, so we could just a little bit. We're just trying to add a little bit of movement in there, and that's all. And the fifth and last point is to manually play the filters in. So when I'm recording my hardware synths, I will just utilize the filter that's on there and then play it by hand, and then I just record a bunch of passes going in. This will kind of give me more of a live feel to it, and it will just add to the sort of less sterile feel to the whole track. So one thing you can do within yours, obviously most plugins will have their own filter, but instead of just coming in, we can just close this a little bit, coming in, we got automation, we're going to go serum, and then we'll just go, oh, nice. Yeah. Filter cutoff. Instead of just coming in, putting in a point, bang, it's a perfect line. And that can work for most situations, but honestly, I think that actually playing the filter in, and this is where having a little MIDI controller can really help, but playing the filter in, so that's about it for today, but there are 5 little points to make your plugin synth sound a little less sterile and a little more analog. And if you have any other points, feel free to leave a comment below. But hopefully at the end of the day, I've inspired you to create something. And until next time, see you later.